Hey everyone, wanted to show a video of kind of the build out and installation of a Powerhouse Racing triple pump hanger for a GS300, IS300. Basically the same design. So first of all, really nice and clean. I bit the bullet because I just wasn't able to keep up with a single fuel pump. So, in terms of things on the market, there's not a lot. Powerhouse Racing is a well-known name in the 2J space, so went ahead and put down the money and ordered this pump hanger. It's really solid, well built, looks really well engineered. I'm excited to see how it performs. Right out of the box, there's not a lot. There's a how-to online, and so I went ahead and read up on that, and then I decided I'd kind of start preliminarily. Um, Bolting up the pump. I have another pump in the car, so I've got to do some other things. So it's going to be a slow process. But right off the bat, the thing that I noticed that was a little concerning was if you look, here where the pumps would go in each of these. If you had three, I have two. However, this is where your sending unit goes. This is where your jet valve is, and it just doesn't look quite like these pump connections. The feed lines are centered. In fact, they're almost opposite. So what I did was I went ahead and pulled the 6 millimeter Allen screw here, and whoever assembled this at their shop was basically 180 degrees out. Luckily, it's got a tapered fitting there, so that it will only go one of two ways, and whoever was putting it together, probably in a hurry, did not notice that was the wrong way. But easy enough fix, and there we go. All of them line up. And so we're on the path to the next step, which Powerhouse Racing in their video indicates that you need to install the hoses. Now here's an example of a hose, and you would install it on one of the non-plugged. This one's plugged. So if you're like me running two, there's two that are non-plugged. You'd install that, and then you push the pump onto it. Now, this is where I ran into the next challenge, is if you put this on here, and I already did, and I had to take it off, and it's not easy to get off. The instructions for Powerhouse Racing say you need to run your pump all the way down to where it bottoms out. I'll not use the plugged hole. So I really like this design, though. I really like how it holds it very securely and very well machined. I'm going to put the phone down for just a moment while I use two hands to push this in. Okay, there we go. So this is a 275, I think, pump, if I'm not mistaken, or 274, is it? DI Automotive, also known as a 450 or 480. You can see it's very close, and the cool thing is it's dead centered, so great. The challenge here is if you were to install this like I did, the hose or the connection here is way too tall. So after putting it on there, I went ahead and scribed myself a mark on where I'm going to have to hack it down. And that way I'll be able to fit this little connection hose on there. All the hoses were the same length, which is to say they're all too long. They sent you 3 of them. They're just not going to work for these pumps. So I am going to go ahead and hack, and then once that's done, I'll put them back on. They send you the connections and for both ends of the hose, and I'll pick it up here later. So here they are. I trimmed them down about 40 to 43 millimeters. They come with these nice clamps that you put on there, and then get yourself a good set of these pliers that are made for crimping these sorts of clamps. And I had to remove this little set screw here to get this one on, but then it's just a matter of putting them in the jaws, squeezing it tight, and that hose is not going to move. All right, quick update. We've got the pumps wired, the butt connectors connecting the hot wires, and these crimped on connectors, kind of this style. Over here, one is theirs, one is mine. I don't know why I didn't get the three that would have come with it, but that's fine. Don't know exactly how the wires will fit in there. I'll tie them up probably after I test fit it in the tank. They say to zip tie them together, and that makes sense. I know there's not a ton of room down there, but anyway, clean install. I'm pleased with how everything came together. Now just need to put on. Oops, looks like I still need to crimp these. I didn't crimp them just in the event I needed to pull these out again, so I'll crimp these, and then I'll be adding the sending unit. I wanted to take a second and do a quick comparison of the height of the unit. So if I put the, of course, I haven't put the seal on there, so I'll put about the seal width difference there. You can see the original. This is an Aristo hanger, but the GS300, IS300 hangers are the same height. Is going to sit a little lower in the tank than this one. Okay, here we are with the hanger kind of next step. Got the grounds here. I've got the sending unit installed with the float. I don't know if polarity matters, but I looked at the pictures in the tutorial from Powerhouse Racing, and I hooked these two wires up accordingly based on that tutorial. So hopefully that's good. As far as the return line, in the tutorial they have a nice flex hose, and they say flex it away from the inlets here. In this, they give you essentially the same hose material that they're using. It looks like just a longer piece of hose that they're using to connect the pump outlets to the top of the hat there, or the bottom of the hat there. The problem is twofold. One, it's not really flexible. I mean, you can bend it, but it's a straight piece of tubing, so it will more kink than bend. The other issue is, if you look at the height, I'll give you a wider shot. Once it's all the way down there, it's a good bit longer, and that's going to interfere with the bottom of the tank. It's going to hit the bottom of the tank. There's just not that much room. I've worked in this tank enough, at least on the GS300. So you could either trim it, but if I trim it, it's going to put kind of, it's going to aerate the fuel right there by the pickup, which I also don't like. So it might work, but I'm not really a fan, particularly when I have an alternative. So I had this on another hanger I had. So I think what I'll do is I'll use this flex hose. That way I can put it in there and just bend it out of the way. Okay, now that I have the seal installed there, I realize that cavity that I had where the seal now rests is gone. Consequently, when I push the sending unit down, it's going to crush the wires and bend them. So in the tutorial, you'll see that these there's a 90-degree bend on these clamps, or the wire ends, the leads, if you will. So I'm gonna have to take my needle nose and do a 90-degree bend on those, so that they'll not come into contact with that rubber seal when I press the sending unit down. You can see where those clamps hook. It's about another half inch or so down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and cinch it down. All right, ready to go down in the tank here. I have an older pump, and that's why the sock's a little bit yellow. Very close tolerance, but it's not touching the sock. So looks good overall. Really happy about it. Hopefully be able to get it out of the tank without any issues. I didn't use their clamp on this hose, the reason being I wanted to be able to rotate this hose later if I need to, so I went ahead and used a worm clamp instead on that return hose. I've got I've got a plug behind where my thumb is, but otherwise there's a 6 return and an 8 feed, and we're about ready to go into the tank. So you can see this is a tight fit. Not quite in. Got the pump bodies in. My screw there may be a problem later. We'll see. But you can see the sending unit's hanging over the side. I don't like that. It's a 20-year-old part, but I've not broken one yet. I guess I have one spare, so we'll see. As soon as that pump drops under the lip there, that should give us some relief. So we'll keep pushing, but it's a tight fit for sure. All right, I got it in. It was tight with 2 pumps. Can't imagine 3. But it's in there. I ended up having to bob off the. There's a little plastic arm that's kind of the stopper for the float on the high side, and I had to bob off the end of it. I was worried about breaking the larger arm or portion of the sending unit if I didn't. I still think there's enough material there to act as a stop, but I did have to do that to get it to sit down in there, which I don't think is a big deal, but wasn't necessarily advertised that way. And maybe I could have forced it, maybe not. I didn't think the risk was worth it. This is kind of tight right here. I'll probably do something about that edge. I just wouldn't want that to sit there and vibrate over time. But otherwise, these bolts, I'd like to have another millimeter or so on those. Getting the first few to start threading in, it felt like just a couple threads catching. It's kind of strange. You can see like some of them are like pretty well aligned in the middle, and then some of them are more to the side as far as the alignment. But overall, I think this is going to work well. This is a tight area. This is the cover. When it goes down over there, there's, it's not flush. So I have to use a rubber mallet. We'll see. I may have to get heavier than that, but I kind of put myself a little area there that kind of outlines where it's touching, and on the back side there was already a little metal mark where it had been. Essentially down here around this area right here is where it's hitting. So see if I can kind of knock a little dent in there to pull it up and away from the top of the fuel head there. Okay, so I'm wired up here, and I thought for those of you that haven't done this, might be worth going over quickly. I apologize for the mess. I know there's a lot of wires. I'll try to clean it up before I bundle it all together, and by nature of putting it all together, it'll be a little bit tidier, but really the only way to give you a good rundown is with it all out. So first off, there's 2 relays, one for each pump, and this is the recommended approach. This is I guess I'll call it the primary. So you have 2 red wires. One is running from your battery source, so this goes all the way back to my battery, fused with a 20 amp fuse, 25 amp fuse, I believe. This second wire is the hot wire for your pump. The black is your ground, so you need to run this to grounded on the chassis somewhere nearby. And the blue is your trigger. In this case, I'm triggering it off of the stock hot wire for the stock pump. Now this is the second relay, and again, top wire is going to your pump, bottom red wire is going back to the battery. Again, its own fused 25 amp fuse link. Black is going to ground. It's going to go to the same ground as the other relay ground, and then the blue is the trigger. Now in this case, my trigger, I've got it running to my Haltech ECU, which will trigger at a certain, whatever parameter I want to set it at. Now, that's to power the pumps. Now, in addition, there's these two wires, and as I understand it, they're only for resistance. So the which wire goes to which doesn't matter as far as your factory harness. But these wires go to the sending unit inside the tank, and on the outside they go to these thin little wires right here, which are the factory sending unit wires. So this is the factory loom, two sending unit wires, and then one ground, which is no longer used at all, and then the hot, which is used as my primary pump. So essentially the car, turning the key on the car will activate the primary pump. That's the gist of it. Okay, so this is kind of the final check. Turn on your pump, check for leaks, and if you're like me, tighten one of your hoses and recheck for leaks. I don't see any at this point. If you want to be extra thorough, you can raise your fuel pressure at your regulator, which you should probably have if you have a double pump, and make sure it's not going to be leaking at an additional 20 psi or whatever you're going to run in the turbo. But otherwise, I think we're in pretty good shape. So I'm going to get it buttoned back down, and we'll get a final look. All right, so here we are with the semi-finished product. 2 power wires going in, one large ground coming out from the tank, a ground coming in from each of the 2 relays. This is a 1/4-inch bolt. I drilled a hole in the chassis and put a bolt through there for that ground. I just wasn't able to find a great ground elsewhere. I had grounded before to this over here, but it's a much larger nut, and I didn't want to run wires as far, so did that. Got the cover back on. You can see here like kind of what's going on. I think this grommet's going to be fine for what it is. I cut it to get the wires through. This is a heavy gauge wire. Once I put the seat on it though, it'll lay it flat. Same with these. They'll lay flat. When I put the seat down, it will lay all of these wires flat. It shouldn't be a problem. Tidied up a little bit. Want to keep these wires out of this hole here where the seat comes down. Don't want to get in there. So I put a tie there. I might need to put another one over here just to reinforce that. But yeah, otherwise this is back together, less the seat cushion being on, and hopefully we'll be having plenty of fuel now. Well, I took the car for a drive and I ran into a little issue. The issue was the second pump wasn't coming online. So came back here, checked my wiring, it's all good, and checked a couple of resources, and I found the error in my ways. The error here is the assumption that I made that this blue wire for my secondary pump trigger should be connected to the ECU. If I were thinking properly at the time, it would have occurred to me that the ECU needs to be holding the ground wire. This is the ground wire from this, because the ECU will ground a circuit based on the way you program it and set it up. It will not provide power. Okay, so here I am. I've got my wiring mix-up repaired, so the ground from the relay is running to the trigger from my Haltech ECU. This is just an empty ground where it was. And then the trigger, the power, 12-volt power for the relay is coming from a constant 12-volt source from the car's wiring harness. So it will provide 12 volts of constant to both the primary and secondary pump, but the secondary pump will only be grounded when the ECU dictates it so from this wire from this wire here. So hopefully I'll have more success in my second venture, but before I head out, I'm going to go ahead and try to trigger it manually here, kind of in a test sort of format, but I'm optimistic that that was the issue. Okay, back out of the car here. This is my GS300 with the Aristo swap. This is the car that I was installing the triple hanger into. Went ahead and validated that that secondary pump would come online from the trigger in the ECU, despite my gaffe earlier in the wiring. After I got that sorted out, everything's working beautifully. Went ahead and took the car for a drive, did some data logging. Everything is looking better than it was before. The issue I was having was the fuel pressure was not rising as it was expected, as the turbo was increasing in boost about 10-12 psi, and I would be running low on fuel. So everything's working great. Really pleased with the way that the product was designed, pleased with everything along the way. Happy that Powerhouse Racing offers a solution like this for these cars, because there's just not a lot out there in many regards, including the fuel system, to get more fuel once you've outpaced what you can manage with a single pump. And since I'm running E85 or flex fuel in this car, the single pump just wasn't able to keep up. Powerhouse Racing rates this as an 8 or 9 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. I would agree with that, but I also think that if it weren't for the risk aspect of it, this might be more of a 6 or 7 sort of job. What I mean by that is, if you make a mistake dealing with your fuel system, you could very possibly hurt yourself or others, and certainly your car. So if you're familiar with the fuel system on these cars or fuel systems in general, you've worked on yours before, this is probably something you could tackle. If not, I would think about getting somebody to help me or having somebody do this for me. This took me probably in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 hours. I'm certainly not the fastest guy working on cars. I try to be thorough. Despite that, I still make mistakes. But this isn't a job that you're gonna get the. At least I'm not gonna get the part delivered to me in the afternoon from the mail carrier and have it installed that evening. It's gonna take a while. If for nothing else, you have to get through the firewall. You have to take apart your interior to run your wires, incremental wiring for me and many of you as well, running to your triggering ECU, etc. So it does take a little while, but the results, like most things on these cars that take a while, are worth it. And overall, I'm really pleased with the solution. Hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.